Доброе утро. У меня на столе. Слушай, так у тебя же, по-моему, один был. Один у тебя, один у меня.
А вот, Леша.
Я не знаю, как можно вообще на первый ряд пойти посесть. Если тебя не смущает. Пошли. Что-то совсем эти с вами было. Пошли, давай. Сюда. Привет. Спасибо.
Добрый день, дорогие друзья. Мне даже очень раннее утро. Меня зовут Oleksandr Shepotylo, я буду сегодня модерировать беседу как наш ивент. Добро пожаловать на семинар «Явная микроэкономика от первых лиц». Когда мы задумывали этот семинар, мы думали о том, что в Украине сегодня есть две, скажем так, школы экономистов. Одни считают, что экономику нужно либерализовать, нужно все отпустить, бизнесу нужно дать дышать и прекратить регулировать бизнес. Другие считают, что нужно поддерживать отечественного товаропроизводителя, государство должно вмешиваться в экономику. На самом деле эта дискуссия происходит не только в Украине, а во всем мире. И сегодня не существует единого решения. И именно потому мы решили сделать этот семинар, пригласить лучших теоретиков, экономистов на эту тему и лучших практиков, а именно реформаторов из Украины, для того, чтобы к концу этих 2 дней знания, а как же действительно надо делать. Итак, немного по адженде нашего мероприятия сегодняшнего. Сейчас будет выступать Oleksandr Shepotylo, преподаватель из университета Брэдфорда, о продуктивности фирм, влиянии регулирования и торговой политики на продуктивность. Он будет выступать на английском языке, и это будет одна из 2 лекций на английском, которая состоится в течение этих 2 дней. Следующая будет завтра, Pittmana, и все презентации на английском языке переведены на украинский, поэтому вы можете их получить либо на e-mail, либо на сайте ВОС. Перерыв на каву будет в 11:30, в 13:30 до 3 часов будет перерыв на обед, поэтому вы можете пойти погулять, отдохнуть от нас и вернуться уже в 3 часа. В целом наше мероприятие сегодня построено таким образом. Первые 2 выступления будут от теоретиков, собственно, до обеда, а дальше будут практики. Ну, пожалуй, все. Я думаю, мы можем начинать. Александр, мы вас приглашаем.
Спасибо. Доброе утро. Меня зовут Oleksandr Shepotylo. Я из университета Брэдфорда. Я раньше преподавал в Высшей школе экономики долгое время. Вот, моя лекция была анонсирована как теоретика, на самом деле я бы сказал, что я практик, или, как говорят экономисты, эмпирик. То есть у нас будет такое разделение: чистые теоретики, потом теоретики практики, и потом практики. Я больше как практик. Я очень рад вас видеть в этом зале. И я хочу сказать, почему я говорю английский, потому что уже 15 лет читаю лекции на английском, и когда я пытаюсь читать лекции на русском или на украинском, это кажется очень сложно. Потому что я думаю, что это будет сложно для меня и для вас, потому что это будет какая-то смесь английско-украинского или английско-русского. Я буду говорить по-английски. Я даже считаю, что это, не хочу за это извиняться, потому что если вы интересуетесь этими вопросами, то, конечно, нужно знать английский, потому что все статьи в основном пишутся на английском языке. So, I welcome you here in this room, and I will be talking about productivity and economic development in the broad sense, but then I will talk more about firms in particular. And why it's interesting why we study firms, because economy consists of firms, and if we want to understand why some countries are richer than others, we can look at the very lowest micro level and study firms why they are more productive in some countries and why they are not very productive in other countries. Okay, and if I describe what I'm doing for the last, say, 8 years, I study industries, and in these industries there are many firms, and there are firms like Apple or Microsoft, which are very big. And there are very small firms that exist in the same industry. So the question is how they survive in the same industry and how companies can grow to the level of Apple, Google, or other very famous multinationals, and why in Ukraine we don't have this kind of companies. Okay? So that's the question, my research question, and I will try to explain you what I learned from this. Okay, so in this lecture, we will learn about total factor productivity or just productivity. So why firms are more productive or less productive. And then I will talk about what are sources of economic growth. So how can we link this productivity to economic growth and to GDP, gross domestic product per capita. And then I give you some example of economic policy in Ukraine, which explain how we can become more productive and how Ukraine can grow. Okay, so I would like to start with a quote by Paul Krugman. He's a very famous economist who got the Nobel Prize. Also, he's a columnist in New York Times. He's a very liberal economist. He promotes what we discussed as liberalization. And he says that productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it's almost everything. Okay? So if we want Ukraine to be a successful country, Ukraine should have productive firms, and we have to find ways to increase productivity. That's the key for any type of economic growth. And if you look at different countries and ask the question why some countries are rich and some countries are poor, it's mostly about productivity. Okay? So it's very easy to increase capital, to buy equipment and to make it work. But it turns out that even if you buy all equipment in the world, country cannot become successful just by adding physical capital. So there is a very mysterious thing which is called productivity, and if we want to reach high level of development, we have to understand how it works. So the question is then, how country can increase productivity? Okay, so I would like to start with the what is called production function. Okay, so it's a little bit of theory. So here we have a picture of a factory in the middle. Okay, so and for this factory to work, it needs a capital and labor that goes every day to this factory. And at the end of the day, this factory produces output, which is called Y. Like this red Tesla. Okay, so all these components, capital and labor, are required to produce the output. And if you want to model how economy works, then you start with production function, which is called F, capital F, as a function of K and L. Okay? So when we describe a company or a country, we want to understand how capital and labor are mapped into output. We describe it as this production function. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can stop me and ask. Okay, if something is not clear. Okay, so far, we introduced this production function. This production function, we can think about it for a company. For a firm, we have labor and capital, and company produce output. Or we can think about this production function for a country. If we think about production function for a country has total employment, all people in this economy who are working. Then the country has capital. It's value of all fixed assets like machinery, buildings, everything. And then in the other end of this chain, output is produced, and this output is called gross domestic product, or GDP. So this representation is useful because we can then try to understand why countries produce more or less output. So some countries have more people, some countries have more capital. So in the end, if we count all people or all capital and output, we can link them all together and see why some countries producing more and some countries producing less. Okay? And this is like a very general form, so it doesn't tell us anything about how this function looks like. But it turns out that we can make it more specific. So here I have a formula. Maybe I will have 2 or 3 formulas in my lecture. So this is one of them. This is a production function which has a very specific form. It has capital, has labor, has output or GDP, and then it has this productivity for different countries or for different firms, and try to explain why for some firms and countries this is higher than for others. Okay? So what do we know about this A? Just looking at this formula here. So first of all, it measures how much output a worker can produce with a unit of capital. Okay, so we combine capital and labor, have one worker, one machinery, together they produce output. And how much output they produce? They will produce 8 units of output. Okay? So for countries that have high, large A, with the same equipment and the same worker, they will produce more. And you can see that if we increase this A, if we double this A, then GDP will also double. Okay? So if productivity increase by 100%, the GDP of country will also increase by 100%. And this is the source of economic growth. And by the way, it's not true about capital or labor. So if we just buy new equipment, if we double capital in this country, so, okay, if we double K here, this will not double output. The output will increase, let's say, if beta, which is so beta is a number which in real life it describes what is the returns to, what is the payments to owners of capital in the economy. And why 1 minus beta explain how much is paid to workers. Okay, so we take just national accounts from many countries, for developed countries. 30% of GDP is paid to workers, and only 30% is paid to capital owners. And knowing this fact, this beta is roughly 0.3. Okay. So estimates of beta is 0.3. So then if we double capital, the output will increase only by 20%. Okay. Increasing capital by 100%, increase output just by 20%. And that's why we cannot grow much, adding more and more capital just to the economy. But we can grow much faster if we just increase productivity. Then there is a much simpler concept of labor productivity. So we take the output of a factory or sales of a factory, divide by the number of workers, you will learn how much output or sales each worker produces. Well, this labor productivity is linked to total factor productivity, but it also includes this effect of capital on productivity. So labor productivity is TFP or A times capital per worker. Okay? So the difference in TFP and labor productivity can be described as this picture here. So if you look at these two guys, one is they're doing the same thing. We have one worker here, one worker there. So what is the difference here? Of course, they have different capital. Okay? So capital will be this horse and this tractor. Okay, so labor productivity will tell you that, oh, in this country, worker is much more productive. But you can say that he's using a tractor. Okay, so you can say that if we buy a tractor for this guy, they will be equally productive. But it's not true in reality. In reality, it's much more than just buying a tractor. So for a successful country to grow, you need much more than just buying a tractor for this guy. Because if you ask this question, why some countries are rich and some countries are poor? Well, it's not because one has more capital and others have less. It's just because in some countries productivity is very low. Okay, and it's very difficult to understand why it's low. But and I would like to explain this picture here. Okay. If I move this way, can you hear me? Yeah. So this is some numbers I have. So I took some countries: China, Ethiopia, Germany, India, Poland, Turkey, Ukraine and United States. And so I took GDP of each country and divided it by number of workers. Okay? So this you can do yourself if you go to. Yeah. Hello? Okay. So if you can do it yourself if you go to this, there is a data which is called Penn World Tables. Okay, so if you look at productivity, labor productivity, then you can find a country like Ethiopia has $2,200 per worker per year. And the United States has $93,000 per worker per year. So you have a difference of about 50 times between Ethiopia and US. For Ukraine, and this is 2011, so the difference was about 5 times, okay? So in Ukraine, labor productivity was 18,000, in US 93, okay? Which is this number here. So these red bars tell us by how much each worker produced more output relative to US. So it's easy to see that in Ethiopia 50 times less, in Ukraine 5 times less, in Turkey about 2 times less than in US. And then, okay, so what's the why this is the case? So if you look at just contribution of capital, okay, so in US capital, workers have more capital. The contribution of capital to these differences are not very big. Okay, so if you see this blue or dark blue bar, tells the difference in capital per worker, contribution to output in different countries. So Ukraine produces less output per worker relative to US by about 34% because it has less capital. But it also about 3 times less productive. Okay? So if you buy a tractor to Ukrainian farmer and compare him with US farmer, still Ukrainian farmer will produce about 3 times less output than American one. And so why is the case? That's a very difficult question to answer actually. So for the rest of this lecture, I will discuss why there are differences in productivity and what can we do to make Ukrainian worker as productive as US worker. Okay? And for that, output is produced not by countries, by firms. And then we study firms to explain this, to understand why this is the case. Okay. So we study firms, and I will, I will talk about this in the second part of this lecture. Okay, so we have to start with, we start to decompose the country into sectors and then firms. There are many different sectors: agriculture, manufacturing, services, and each sector can be decomposed into, let's say, manufacturing can be production of cars, electronics, food industry, services can be hotels, can be transport, and so on. Okay, so if we take just one industry, let's say food industry, there are many firms in this industry. Some of them are very small, some of them are very big. Okay, so they're hugely different, and they work in the same industry. Okay, so first of all, for people who are more familiar with the theory, there are different types of markets. Okay, so there are markets which are competitive, perfectly competitive. There are markets which are monopolistic. Okay, there are markets like oligopoly, where you have just 2 companies or 3 companies operating. And there are markets which are called monopolistic competition. Okay, monopolistic competition is the industry which has hundreds of firms, but each firm is different in some way. It's unique. It produces output which is recognized. So the industry will be monopolistic competition if you recognize brands. So if you care about having Apple phone or Nokia or Samsung, this is monopolistic industry. Because they produce similar goods, but still people care about some brands. And most industries are quite well modeled as monopolistic competition. And this industry also has firms. Some firms expand, gets bigger. Some firms contract, get smaller. Some firms go bankrupt and stop working. And some firms are new companies. Okay, so if we think about all these different events at the same time and try to link it with industry productivity. Okay, so why some industries are more productive and others are not? There are many firms in industry, each has its own productivity. Okay, so this lowercase a is productivity of each firm. And there are methods to compute this productivity. Okay? So you can have data, and for each firm you can find this little a. This is what I do in my research. So I find how each firm is productive. And if you see that there are many different firms, and this a can be very little or very big in the same country, in the same industry, in the same year. So you compute these a's. But then different firms have different market share. So market share, this SI, is output of company I over output of the whole industry. Okay? So this is market share. So the definition of industry productivity is the weighted average of productivity of each firm. So you multiply productivity of a firm by its market share. And you get the overall productivity of industry. Okay? And then the question why some countries are richer and some countries are poor can be explained just by trying to explain how we can get this A going up. How can we increase this A? And if you look at this formula here, you can say that there are, well, at least 3 sources. 3 sources how this A can go up. First, you can increase productivity of each firm. Okay? So each firm can become more productive because it learns some new technology or restructure, becomes more efficient, or maybe it goes to other markets. It can expand to other countries. It all can increase the speed, but also productivity can be going up if, yeah.
What's Omega under the summation?
It's a shortcut. We look at firms which are located in some industry. So we look at omega J will be food industry. Okay, for example, food industry. So then all firms that belong to food industry. So we don't take all firms which are in food industry and study what is the overall productivity of food industry. And then, so basically, the second source of productivity grows if productive firms expand market share, okay? And non-productive firms contract. So if SI goes up for productive firms and SI goes down for non-productive firms, you will get higher productivity. That's the second source of productivity growth in industry. And the third one will be what is called churning process. Churning означает, когда вы взбиваете масло, это называется churning. То есть вы так вращаете взбивалку. То есть churning process is rotation of firms. Every year, new companies appear, emerge, and old companies shut down. So if you can create incentives that non-productive firms shut down and new firms are more productive, you will get higher productivity growth. So this is the third source. Okay, and I explain it here. Okay, so sources of industry productivity growth are the following. Existing firms increase their productivity using better technology, improving their business practices, or improving their organization of production. Then reallocation of resources towards more productive firms. Okay? This is expanding market share for productive firms and contracting market share for non-productive firms. And there is a very interesting study by this economist Say and Klenov. So what they found? They found that if you correctly move workers and capital from non-productive firms to productive firms, the output in India and China can grow by 30%. So you don't have to do anything other than just take workers and move them in right places. Okay? So very good workers should work in very big companies like Apple, and this company should grow. And companies that are not good should shrink and just disappear. So, and this, if this works, as it works in the United States or European Union, then if you move these people in India and China, you can increase GDP by 30% just by doing that. Okay? And then the third element is what is called creative destruction or firm churning. So for economy to grow in productivity, you should create mechanisms that will stimulate low productive firms exit, shut down, and more productive firms open enter the industry. Okay? So this is kind of a theoretical approach. So how can we make economy grow? Now I would like to move to some numbers, some facts. What do we know about, let's say, Ukraine? So I'll talk about Ukraine. This research has been done, I think it's a World Bank data. They computed productivity for countries in transition from Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union. Okay, so they took firms and computed productivity levels. And in this chart you see that the place of Ukraine in 2005 was in the middle. Okay, there were countries which were less productive and countries that were more productive first. Okay, so it was somewhere in the middle. Also, you can see that on the horizontal lines, you see the EBRD transition index. EBRD is European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and it generates index of reforms. Okay. Each year, it measures for each country how it progress in reforms, and then compares these countries. So you see that in reforms, Ukraine was also in the middle. Also, you see that countries that progress in reforms more have also high productivity. Countries that progress in reform less have low productivity. There is one outlier, Belarus. Okay? So it should be studied separately. But if you draw what is called regression line, so if you use some statistical analysis, you can say that countries that progress in reforms also improve productivity of companies. Okay, so Ukraine can move up in productivity if it moves up in reforms here. So that's first level. So each firm become more productive if it yeah.
You mentioned referring to production function of companies, right?
Yes. Yes.
70% and for labor.
Yeah.
Can you suggest that for Ukraine the relation is vice versa?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I wouldn't say vice versa, I would say 50-50. More like 50-50. Yeah. Well, it's very hard to measure. If you look at the wages in firm level data, if you look at firm level data and look at wages, they are very small there. So owners report very small wages, but then they pay extra to workers. So if you just look at the firm level data, you say that, yeah, 70% goes to owners, 30% goes to workers. But I would say if you add all this extra paid money, which are not taxed maybe, then it's 50-50. Okay, so at the second level, okay, so first level was firms can become more productive. The second level is if we allocate resources better in the economy. So remember that I said that in China and India, if you move workers from less productive firms to more productive firms, you get productivity increase about 30%. Well, Mykola Rzhinkov, who is a former student in Kyiv School of Economics, he published research in Journal of Comparative Economics. He did it for Ukraine, and he said that if you make Ukrainian economy as well regulated as US or EU, you can easily just double manufacturing production. Just by making, people shouldn't work in very non-productive companies and they should move to productive companies. And this channel is not working in Ukraine. So, but if you do it, at least to the level of EU and US, which are not perfect as well, you can double manufacturing production. So he found that most enterprises should become smaller. In Ukraine, there are many big unproductive enterprises which should downsize. And then you should move these workers who are fired from these small non-productive enterprises to big, more productive ones. Okay? And if you eliminate all distortions, okay, because US and EU are not perfect, so, but if you eliminate all market distortions, then you can triple output. Okay? Which is not easy to do, of course, but there's huge source of growth in output just by making this reallocation work. So what is wrong about why in Ukraine reallocation is not working? So I looked at the data for firms and computed what is called churning of firms. So this is the rate with which new companies created and all companies shut down. So you see that if you compare Ukraine versus many other countries, the churning rate in Ukraine for all firms in 2005, this is the most recent data which are available. Ukraine is not different from other countries. So overall, birth of companies is at about 11%. So each year, 10% of new companies are born in Ukraine, and about 7% shut down in 2005. So this number changes. So it's not different from other countries that much. Also, if you look at large companies, with 10 or more workers, then Ukraine has very high churning rate. So each year, in 2005, about 7% of companies shut down, which is higher than in any other country in this graph. And about 6% were born. So in this way, Ukraine looks fine. So nothing wrong with Ukraine in these numbers. But then what I did, I took data for companies. Okay. I computed what is called productivity. I computed productivity of manufacturing. I think no, it's all companies. It's manufacturing services companies. I computed the total productivity of each company And then I split companies into companies that exit, the companies that disappear, then the companies that stay in the industry, and new companies. So we have exit, stay, or entry. These are new companies, these are remaining, continuing companies, and companies that exit. So we want, if we compute productivity for these companies, different companies, we want this number to be small, this number to be large, and this number can be, well, is a small or large, but it's better to be also high. So if you look at these numbers for just unweighted for simple average, you take all productivities, divide by number of firms, and compute average. So these numbers look fine in 2002 and 2010. So less productive firms shut down, more productive firms stay, and even more productive firms enter. So in this way, it kind of works. But if you compute what I call industry productivity using market shares, so if you weight it by market share, you see that in 2010 there are many big companies that were productive exit. Okay, so if you look at industry productivity, it seems that this churning process is not working correctly, because we have big companies which are productive and they exit, they stop working. Okay, so that's one. The other one is what I call productivity growth. So what I did, I computed how productivity is changing over time for just 3 different type of companies: exiting, staying, and entry. So for unweighted productivity growth, companies that exit have negative productivity growth, so which is correct. If company is declining in productivity, something wrong with this company, so it should exit. The companies that stay, they grow 5% on average every year. So this is for 2002, 2010. This is roughly productivity, this is roughly growth of manufacturing sector in Ukraine over this period. And new companies, you see, they grew at 30%. So it's a very good number. Okay? So if company enters the industry, next year it will be 30% more productive, which is very good. But if you compute a weighted average, which is take it market share into account, you see that big company, if it just enters the market, it cannot grow. There are some problems that big companies that enter the market face, and they cannot grow next year for some reason. Okay? So some market conditions do not allow productive new companies to grow. And also, this market condition also make large companies to exit. Okay, so that's one of the problems of Ukrainian economy, which I found in this churning or creative destruction process. Now, what can be done about all this? We want to make some reforms to make economy better. So we found some things that are not working well in Ukraine. So one of the sources of increasing productivity is policy liberalization. Okay? So many economists advocate that the economy should be less regulated, and the government should reduce its influence of the economy. So one of the powerful channels is policy liberalization. Okay, so theory and empirics says that liberalization is good, but it's good with some conditions. You should expect that liberalization is good for companies that are strong and successful. But it's not good for companies that are small and not successful. And this is called also Matthew effect. So in the Bible, there is a quote saying that if you're rich, you get richer. If you're poor, you get poorer. So this works for companies. Good companies will survive any liberalization and becomes stronger. but small companies, non-efficient companies, will not survive. Liberalization becomes small, or even go out of business. But overall, it's good for economy when this effect is working, because, as I said, the allocation of resources can double output of companies if you make small and successful companies to shut down and big companies to grow. And as you see from my numbers, there is something that prevents big companies to grow further. So they hit some limit, and they cannot develop further. Okay? One of the benefits of liberalization is going abroad, starting exporting. So what is good about exporters? Why do we care about exporters and we study them as a separate group? So exporters are very different type of companies, because if you look at the United States, exporting companies, they are double size in employment. They are more productive, about 3 to 10%. They pay higher wages. About 5% wages are higher just because company export. Then they have more capital for working. So they have more machinery, more equipment. And workers who work in these companies, they have more skills. They are more educated, and they are more productive. Okay? Okay, so I'll skip this slide. So there are some effects why this happens. Okay, so why some companies are, when they go exporting, they are more productive. So we talk about learning by doing, scale effect, or technology transfer. But what I want to talk is, you all know that Ukraine joined WTO. Работает в эту всемирную такую организацию. And it happened in 2008. And some people say it's not, that didn't improve anything. Okay? And I don't agree with this, by the way, because there were big effects of joining WTO on Ukraine, which people not realize actually. Because the effect of joining WTO was not in reducing tariffs or import tariffs, but in large changes in services. So many laws that were changed in Ukraine between 2003 and 2008 were due to WTO. So, and because of that, banking sector and financial services and IT has proven more successful, much more successful. So that was partially just because Ukraine joined WTO and had to change. It was forced to change many laws and services to make banking sector more open, to make businesses more open, business services and so on. And if you just look at numbers, the services sector grew from 20% of GDP to 50% of GDP between 1990s and 2009. And business services and financial sector grew from less than 10% to about 20%. Okay, so it was a big change in the economy was because services sector going up. Also, FDI in services become much higher. Okay, and so I will take this into account, and this is one of my last slides. Will explain how I understand how liberalization works in practice. Okay, so we have a company, which is this box in the middle. And by the way, it's a real example from real life, but not from Ukraine, from Mexico. So when Mexico joined NAFTA is North American Free Trade Agreement. A big manufacturing company in Mexico were worried about competition from US will shut it down. Okay? But in reality, it grew and took a market share in US. So it became very successful. If you go to website of NAFTA, one of the success stories of NAFTA illustrated with this manufacturer of refrigerators from Mexico. So what they did after liberalization, they start buying good compressors from United States. And before NAFTA, they couldn't do it because tariffs were very high for components. Okay? So they produced their own components and assembled them in the refrigerator. But these were very poor quality, not reliable. So once they signed NAFTA, they start buying components from US, like this compressor. And this makes them improve the quality of their refrigerators, and they grew in a very big company supplying refrigerators to US, Mexico, Canada, and other countries. So this is an example of what is called input tariff trade liberalization effect on productivity. You reduce tariffs, you can buy better components from European Union, for example, and make better production. And this effect is a positive effect on productivity. The other effect is from output tariffs. Okay? So you can, if you reduce tariffs for final production, like for refrigerators, you get more competition from foreigners. And more competition from foreigners, we don't know if it has a positive effect or negative effect. Okay? So we don't know that. Maybe either way. The third one is the services sector. Okay? Services sector can, if it makes better, it helps production of company. Okay? So this is pretty much what people study in effect of policy on liberalization, effect of on components, effect in final markets, effect of other sectors. And okay, and we did it for Ukraine. We did this research for Ukraine. We took a services sector. We knew that it grew a lot during last 10 years. And we said, okay, what is the effect of services on manufacturing companies? And we found that the effect of services on manufacturing was positive. And on average, it increased productivity by almost 10%. Okay? Just because business services, banking, transport, and IT became better, it helped manufacturing companies to grow. But also, there is major effect. More productive firms benefited, less productive firms were hurt by it. Okay? Okay, so in conclusion, I would like to say that what I talked about is that productivity improvement is the key to economic growth. Growth and productivity depends on increasing productivity of firms, that reallocation of resources efficiently, so make it better, and dynamic churning of firms. And this component is not working in Ukraine, actually. Okay, and this can be achieved through different deregulation and liberalization policies. And that's all I want to say. Thank you. Any questions?
So the idea of eliminating market distortion is ultimately related to shifting type of market we have. Because if we eliminate, for example, all the cases that won't shift from monopoly competition which we have now to full monopoly of
Thank you. But theory says you shouldn't eliminate all firms. You should eliminate non-productive firms. Okay? Non-productive firms are usually smaller. That's true. So it should, yeah, market should penalize small companies that don't grow. That's true. But also market should encourage new companies to enter. So if you have very high churning rate, if you have very high exit and entry, so every year new companies emerge. If they are successful, they grow fast and then become big. Okay? And they will survive. But if they enter and they don't grow, they should shut down because it didn't work. So in what is called equilibrium situation, you will have not monopoly, you will have monopolistic competition with different types of firms, and you will have dynamic effects. You have every year new companies appear, old companies shut down. So it should be a very dynamic process, which will not lead to.
Why do you think that allocated efficiency in Ukraine is low? What is the reason? I mean, what is the reason, and why don't some workers leave less productive firms and go to more productive? And isn't it the reason? Isn't it because some workers are less productive and some are more productive? So they are already on their place.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for this question. It's very interesting. So first of all, I encourage you to read the original code. Okay, it's published research. So what he said. So for some reason, small companies are not getting out of business. Maybe so. The idea of this allocated inefficiency is that there are distortions which make these companies, they help them survive. Okay? So it may be labor regulations, or maybe labor market is not very volatile, not very liquid. Okay? So perhaps we have to think about how we can still make people more frequently change their jobs and try to find a better one. But the problem is, I think, mostly because large companies, and which are productive, cannot grow further. Okay? So at some point they hit the limit and cannot expand. There are several channels that people mention. One may be financial constraints. It's very hard to do business in Ukraine because interest rates is very high. Okay, so you cannot expand business at some point because you hit the limit with resources. You cannot borrow. Even if you're very brilliant entrepreneur, at some point you hit the limit, you cannot grow further. Okay, and for this we need to expand to the foreign markets. So I think Ukraine can get easier access to other countries, improve transport infrastructure, change some regulations. It can help these big companies to grow, and then small companies will shut down faster, and people will move to new positions in big companies. Yeah, so I think this.
What would you suggest to use to measure if a company is growing fast enough or not fast enough, like absolute numbers, relative, like market share, a mix of them? And second question, can you please share a source of data that you used in your quite intriguing small tables? They are quite interesting.
You mean this one? Well, the first question, I will look at relative. So I take industry in 1 year and see which companies are growing and which are not. And then you will measure everyone against the average. Okay, so we have average growth in industry within a year, and then you see which companies outperform and which companies underperform. So this will be a benchmark. Okay, and for data, we had firm data from Goskomstat sources, but it's collected by Kyiv School of Economics. It's data, Ukrainian inflation.
I have actually 3 comments. First is coming back to these statistics. I should say from my experience and also taking a look around that maybe 80% of the new companies which are created in Ukraine and which are closed in Ukraine, it's related to some tax avoidance issues, so we cannot say that it's new business.
Okay.
So from this perspective, I see these statistics, it can be really distorted, especially taking into account your source of information. Then second comment is that in year 2010, it was a year after financial crisis, general financial crisis. So the companies who could be operationally sound, who could be productive, they could be under financial distress. So it could be a reason also of these statistics for year 2010. the second comment. And third one is related to the correlation between increase in services sector and manufacturing, starting from year 2000 until 2010, for example. So how could you eliminate effect from external effect, so effect from growing expansion of general expansion of world economy, increase of resources prices, increase of metal prices. You know that correlation doesn't mean causality, and here is correlation or causality really. So was it really the case that increase in services sector led to expansion of manufacturing, or maybe it's a problem of kitchen and of chicken and egg? So how could it emanate?
First two comments, I agree with you. So there are some distortions, but I have data. I looked at data for other years as well. So it's not. So might be other reasons, but for certain one. I looked at, so I control for industry effect, here effect. Okay, so it's within the industry, you compare two companies. One company use more services, one company use less services. If services improve, companies that use services more improve faster. So I control for external effect. So of course there are some other effects can be present, but at least for this one I took account.
Спасибо за презентацию. Вы начали ее с цитаты Крупмана. И, как известно, Крупман изменил свое отношение к повышению минимальной зарплаты. Я хотел связан с этим вопрос. Как вы считаете, в условиях Украины повышение зарплаты минимальной будет являться каким-то драйвером экономического роста или нет? Ну, оставим в стороне все остальные факторы, которые вы говорили, именно минимальная зарплата.
Я считаю, что повышение зарплаты является драйвером совокупного спроса. То есть, если люди получают больше денег, экономика растет за счет того, что потребление повышается. Да? То есть, я за то, чтобы зарплаты повышались. Насчет минимальной зарплаты, я не знаю, насколько она вообще, этот механизм работает или нет в Украине. То есть, какова минимальная зарплата, насколько много людей получает эту минимальную зарплату. То есть, просто декларативно сказать, что давайте повысим минимальную зарплату, я не думаю, что это просто будет работать. То есть это может работать в некоторых условиях, но не во всех. Тем более, учитывая, что насколько контроль за выполнением законов, он эффективен или нет. То есть просто декларативно повысить минимальную зарплату, я не думаю, что это так просто улучшит ситуацию, но повышение зарплаты в общем, конечно, позитивно сказывается, но оно должно отражать увеличение производительности труда. В общем. Потому что, как мы видим из Греции, пример Греции показывает, что если мы просто повышаем зарплаты, то экономика, в конце концов, просто идет в тупик.
Спасибо большое, Александр. Давайте let's wrap up with questions. Время кофе-брейка. Сейчас я хотела бы пригласить Владимира Биlotkachа на сцену с докладом, почему правительство регулирует конкурентные рынки.